the question of authorship, courts have determined that that requires a human component to it. And there's all kinds of philosophical reasons as to what that really means. But we know it doesn't mean animals because of some rulings, and we know it doesn't mean pure machine. As once the machine-mankind distinction starts to get blurrier because people may upload the thought processes of people who passed away onto machines, I think the important thing for businesses is they realize that if they want to gain some exclusive rights, meaning stop others from using what they're using, they want to imbue in their output sufficient human creativity, human effort, human fine-tuning, and fine-grained instruction sets to the machines.
There is some court cases recently. People are trying to argue that it's like you spend all this effort creating this machine, who then creates this, especially as you get these individual machine learning modules, especially some of the those, they tend to have more specific purpose. And so people are trying to take away that predictability. And if it takes away this idea of you don't know what the output's going to be, like you have to keep entering prompts until you get the result that you want. So the predictability, I think, is definitely a factor that we've seen.
I think we are going to see copyright law change quite a bit because copyright law, I mean, it arose with the advent of the printing press. That's what its origins go back to, Statute of Anne, I think it was. But it has to evolve to deal with this notion of artificial intelligence because AI fundamentally is all about copying and transforming. So each act of copying, each act of looking for something else that exists digitally and then manipulating it in response to a new prompt from a human involves an act of copying. And we've got to ask ourselves questions about where does this start, where does it stop, what can the law do to actually address this? So there needs to be a pretty deep reckoning once we get beyond the point where we are right now. As I said, right now it's basically make sure there's enough human input. That'll start to become much more complicated as things move on.
And kind of before we keep going, I think an important part to address in all this is to y'all, like, what is copyright material? If someone's, hey, I have this thing, I want to protect it, like, when would copyright apply to that?
Yeah, that's the generic set of rules for copyright that exist already. It needs to be an original work of authorship fixed in a tangible medium. And so it can't just be an idea, it has to be a specific expression, and it has to be recordable. A tangible medium fundamentally just means recordable, reproducible. And there's thresholds for originality, which are currently pretty low. And will start to probably change when we start to view AI models as repositories for all of prior originality. That'll start to change. Right now we're relying on the law's notion of originality is really just a function of the things people have bothered to register at the Library of Congress, plus all of the decisional law that has dealt with questions about this. That's a tiny subset of all the originality that happens in human interaction.
In terms of words or the universe, we do need to revisit all that. I just think people need to focus on this element of, okay, here's what I did, here's what I put in. It's no different than asking the entire world, what would you maybe do next? And then what do you do with what comes out? And I feel like you can always add something to that. And I think so that's a good point. We've been talking about copyright. Trademark's a little different in so much that goes to how you can add value to it in terms of how you use it, where you use it, and so forth. That's one of the other things, obviously, you probably want to get some consultation from attorneys on in terms of the detail, but it doesn't preclude you from being able to take something and make it yours in terms of how you talk about it and stuff like that. Never fear, there's always some way for the law to.
So I think if you're talking about using AI for content like that, you really have, let's call it two main buckets of concern. One is, I think, the one we've been addressing, which is this idea of exclusive rights. Can you stop others from doing what you're doing? The other is, are you infringing on someone's copyright by using a common AI tool? And the AI is actually the means by which you're effectively photocopying somebody else's product. So part of this has to do with the licenses you have with the AI vendor of choice. Ideally, if you're actually using this for professional purposes, you should probably have a more custom and tailored AI solution than using one of the freebies that are out there, because they're not going to give you what we would call, the lawyers call warranties when it comes to the intellectual property. Warranties, I mean, let's look at them broadly. When you're dealing with an AI solution that's supposed to actually be used in your business, you want that AI tool to give you the appropriate warranties, that the products it's using, the information it's using, it has appropriate license to use, and that what it's providing to you is not infringing copy of somebody else's work. I would review the license you have with your AI application, and if you're using this professionally, if an actual business, maybe don't just rely on the free stuff that's online. Maybe arrange to have a custom solution put in, and then ask these questions.
The term here is terms and conditions.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, that's where you're going to find a lot of those warranties. If you're not able to review them, well, obviously we know people that can. But fundamentally, you both want to know that about the product you're using. But I would also say, from the other standpoint, if you are running a business that, like you're a content creator, right? And what you make is potentially competing with someone else that physically does something, they do it themselves, you need to pay attention, like I said, to whose rights do you have to use a place, an image, whatever, someone's face. And a lot of the AI products you use will actually say, hey, we will not put someone's face on something, right? And so a lot of those are details you want to know ahead of time.
To steer those a little bit more towards what advice to give businesses towards using AI tools in their regular business, I would have to say I'm more towards the side of companies need to establish clear policies for their employees to understand. I don't think every business has the aptitude to block all of their employees from certain uses. And in a way, you do want people that are working under you to use the most efficient tools. So you want to encourage that as well. So I think it's very important for companies to understand that this is present and it's probably going to be in your own workplace, whether or not you use it yourself, someone probably is. And so establishing clear policies that everyone in the company understands and uses is going to be extremely important, especially because you're trying to keep company information to the business itself and not sourced outside of it. So you're going to want to see, it's the idea of why you give someone a work laptop so they don't use their personal laptop. It's the same idea why you might have a work phone instead of a personal phone, or you keep numbers separate. It's because there needs to be a clear divide for what they're using these tools for their personal use versus what they're using for the company. And then when that relationship with that ends, there needs to be a clear divide, a walking away where they're not taking all that information with them, because all this information saves to these AI tools.
Yeah.
You have all these things that you've worked on. So I do think we have to start considering that.
Yeah, and that's going to be email addresses, accounts within the AI tool, instant social media accounts that they may use in connection with it. If you're a business, you want to make sure that they're using yours for anything that they're working on to maintain that control and that oversight.
It's not that hard to imagine in the near future that work processes, enterprise level software will have built-in sort of breadcrumb ability, so that if someone is copying and pasting out of AI, there will be some sort of automatic means of saying where it got it from, what the prompts were, what the time was, all those sorts of things, so that there's a disclosure that this is not, I'm not claiming this is something I came up with out of my own mind. This is something that's drawn out of what's fundamentally a shared resource or a subscribed resource to this matter. And it's not too hard to imagine that in the near future that might end up driving policies used in workplaces. If you're going to be using AI, just basically tell us how you used it. That's probably not a bad policy, is a general proposition. Let us know where the novelty is. Let us know where there's anything that's potentially new here beyond what we would get from running a few queries on publicly available sources. So that level of disclosure, we can think of it as the future of citation or attribution, right? Remember from school days, you had to properly attribute your sources, and of course as lawyers we have to do that for all of our cases, right? But there's a future version of that too, and it'll have AI built right into it. It's probably something we can see coming. Another issue to talk about, so we've been looking at this mostly from the copyright angle, which is basically, again, am I going to be able to stop other people from using this because it's mine and I was the first to think of it? And then am I infringing on somebody else's copy or someone else's words or thoughts or whatever, or expressions I should say. But there's also the trademark side. And the trademark side, again, it's an exclusive right. You're trying to prevent other people from using it, but you're not really claiming that it's so original or wonderful or new. You're claiming that people associate this name or image or symbol with your service or your product yourself. From that perspective, what's really important is that not so much that the logo was generated by AI, What's important is that you do the hard work, which is getting people to connect that brand with you, your company.
And what you do.
Yeah.